but it was recent, and I would like to show you guys some of the tiers. Here it is, the Art Lounge Patreon page. We got, and I'm gonna try to make this quick, y'all, because I don't want to cut time away from drawing basics. So if you do want a more of an extensive video explaining all the different tiers, explaining all the benefits and some of the rules that apply, I suggest you guys check out the history of the videos and take a look at Patreon page launch and schedule change. Should be in the highlights as well. You should check out the folder, the highlights folder. It should be in there. But I'm gonna try to do a really quick overview, and that way it's not gonna cut into too much time in the stream itself. So we got tier 1, official patron. You for $2 a month, you get access to the Discord server that pretty much everybody else from all the social media that I advertise on regularly gets access to as well. So you guys can come together into one room, talk about anything, talk about art related things, talk about non-art related things. The idea is to create a community and a channel where you guys can come together, interact with each other, and create ties, create connections, create an interesting community of people interested in art and all sorts of things. So share your ideas, share your thoughts, get to know one another. Then you will get your name listed in the credits. That's right, I'm going to start doing credits at the end of the stream. So if you are a contributor, if you are a tier 1 official patron, you will get a thank you towards the end of the stream. Then we got the tier 2 all access patron. For $5 a month, you get access to work in progress, behind scenes, early access to finished pages, and exclusive content. I'm going to be posting some finished pieces early for people who are in this tier. You guys get to see it before anybody else, before any other social media does. And you will also get exclusive content, stuff that no social media is going to see. It's just going to be on Patreon. And also you will get the previous tier benefits, so access to the Discord server, as I was talking about, your Patreon name listed in the credits, and you'll be part of the Patreon only community. The next one is tier 3, critique submission tier. This is good for people who are learning to draw, or they want some fresh perspective on their drawing to see where they can improve. There's some requirements there. You should read through it. You should visit this Patreon page, take your time, look through it, see which tier you're interested in. It's going to be a new stream. Once I get submissions, it's going to be held every Friday, and I'm going to be doing critique of your work. Right now, at the moment, there are no caps to how many times you could submit per month, but depending on how many people start submitting, there might be a cap going forward. So yeah, read through it. The benefits are pretty much similar to the previous one, except you get live stream critique and promotion. You get artist submission Discord channel, so all of you who do submit, you guys can interact with each other. You could talk about your method, you could talk about pretty much whatever. There isn't really a limit to it. Then we got, you'll get access to work in progress, behind scenes, early access, as I mentioned in the previous tier. Access to the Discord server, Patreon name listed in the credits, Patreon only community, and that's a mistake there. That shows up twice. Have to fix that. Alright, so it's the same thing basically. The last one is the same as work in progress and behind scenes. Then we got, let's see here, Kickstarter patrons for $25 per month. I will be, well, it's a one-time submission. You could do a one-time submission, or you could do it every month. You could send me another photo of yourself with new features. So for those who are interested, you guys pay $25, and I will paint a high digital resolution painting of you. So I do encourage masks, makeup, glasses, expressive face expressions, hats, and accessories. but it's not required. As I mentioned, it's something that you could do if you want to get multiple portraits done, if you want to send in like one photo a month or next month or so on and so forth. You got all these ideas right here to make it more interesting. But yeah, it's not required. You could send me a photo from your head down to your chest. I think it'll make the stream interesting if you do pick up any of these things, or all of these things. Really, there's no real cap to how creative you can get with your portrait. So once you send me that photo, I will be drawing that. That's going to be substituted for the Thursday stream. Thursdays, I believe it is drawing basics and the project stream at the moment. So once I do get a submission, it's going to be substituted on Thursday for 2 hours. I'm going to be doing the digital painting of you. Then you will get all the previous tiers, benefits, get work in progress, behind the scenes, patron name listed in credits, access to that Discord server I was talking about, and early access to finished pages and exclusive content. Then the next one, these are all very different from each other. Tier 5 artist promotion. So for $25 a month, if you're an intermediate or advanced artist, you will have 5-minute airtime on the stream. You guys can send me a 5-minute video of your content. There are some requirements for it. There's quite a bit of information on there. So if you're interested in this, I definitely recommend you read through it. There's some really important information on there. I will be promoting you at the beginning of the stream, before the stream starts. Once you do submit and once you're picked for the stream to be featured on the stream, I'll be promoting you on all the social media platforms prior, and I will be posting your link to your social media during the stream and before the stream as well. So you get pretty good exposure to all the different social media through Art Lounge. But yeah, take your time, read through it. There really is some important stuff about getting selected and so on and so forth. Some ideas as well. And as I mentioned, you could read, you can view the extensive video talking about all the tiers in the highlights section of the Twitch channel. It should be the folder highlights, and it should be in there for you guys to get a better idea. Then we got tier 4 private tutoring for $65 a month. It's limited to 15 people. You will get a 30-minute video per week for a total of 4 videos per month, where I will be giving you hands-on input, step-by-step instructions and demonstrations showing you where you can improve. And you will also get the PSD file that I will be working on in the video, so you could play with it. You could take time to study it at your own pace. And you will also, there will be homework, just to note. I do want you guys to improve. That's the whole idea. I want to give you guys some content to work on throughout the week. So you do have to send me something that you're working on prior to it. And once I receive that, I'm going to start making you videos. And you will have access to a private channel between just me and you. So each member who's, whoops, that's not good. Hold on 1 second. Yeah, that was a little mistake on my part. So yeah, you will get a private channel where you guys can have, we could have one-on-one interaction. So you could leave me comments, you could leave me questions, you could leave me progress images, you could drop photos into that channel, and nobody else is going to have access aside from me and you. So each person who signs up for it is going to get their own private channel. And then you will get the previous tier benefits. So for 4 personal videos per month, PSD file, exclusive Discord channel that I was mentioning, tier 4 members only Discord channel. So anybody who joins this, so all 15 of you will have a channel for you guys to connect with each other as well. So you get the personal one between me and you, and you also have one that's meant for only tier 4 members. You'll also get access to the general Discord channel. That's the one that I was mentioning, and that's available starting from tier 1, where pretty much everybody from all social media, from all the tiers, you guys can go into that channel and interact with each other there as well. And you get all the other benefits listed there as well. So I try to do this quickly, but it ended up being kind of long. So without any further ado, let's jump into the stream. And I'd like to start the stream with a review. Today's Monday. It's the first stream of the week. I do want to get some of these important aspects of drawing as to refresh your mind, basically, to refresh your mind of all the things that we were learning, and just important things that are always necessary to keep in the forefront of your mind when you're drawing, when you're sitting down to draw. And these are the head unit measurements. By the way, you can get these pages, both of these pages, along with other ones on Patreon. I just uploaded them. They're available for you, so you can use them at any time. You could save it, you could print it. So the times that you are sitting, let's say, doing it traditionally, you could just have it side by side with you, and you could practice from it, draw it, redraw it over and over, get more and more familiar with all these measurements and practicing your skills. I think this is a very important page. As you guys notice, I mention it very often. And I also uploaded other pages as well onto Patreon so that you guys can get practice as well. Like this page right here, that's also available. I think it's an important page, and it's just content for you to practice from. You might sit down and you might think, what am I going to draw? You might not have an idea at the moment, or especially just something to work off of. You get to search and try to find something. This way it just kind of cuts that all that off. Basically, you don't have to do that. It's there for you. I'll continue to upload more pages so you guys can have things to practice. The most important thing is that you draw. I could talk about all sorts of things and show you guys all sorts of things, but it's great to have something as simple as this to practice all these different skills, like drawing lightly, not pressing hard on a pencil, keeping your distance from the tip of the pencil, and just sketching prior to really getting into detail, sketching out the entire figure. And these are just really simple, simplified versions of the human figure that become more and more important as you draw. You want this as your foundation, as your starting point. Think of it as like the beams to a structure. Before you start laying on the bricks, before you start designing the interior of the house, you want to make sure that it stands on solid ground, right? So this is basically what these pages are for. They're helping you create these beams to have that solid starting ground and then build on top of it. These are inked, obviously. That's more for you guys. Also to practice, to practice inking, to practice drawing the figure and proportions, understanding all this. So these pages are simple and crucial. They're great exercises. They're great ways to stretch before you jump into a more technical or more detail-oriented drawing. So they're available on Patreon. They're in this page as well. That shows you all the unit of measurements as well. So check those out. Check out that. Starting with tier 2. So once you become a full access patron, you'll have access to these pages and all future pages that I'll be uploading as well. And as I mentioned before, you want to just be able to own these things. So once you are a full-pledged patron, you can download it and keep it. You can have it as long as you want. You could, as I mentioned, you could print it. So it's there for you. So let's start here. This is an important page, I think, for everybody who's starting out, for even intermediate or even advanced. I see people who are professionally doing this for a living, and they still practice, or they just do their stretches prior to jumping in and finishing up a page. But this page just talks about some of the simple things that you guys can practice. Pretty much everybody. I always recommend getting something small like this, little sketchbook. Use it on your trips to work, trips to school, if you're on public transportation or whatever it is, you got some free idle time, you could just sit down and practice doing these very simple things like shading, practicing your gradation. And within this practicing shading and gradation, you also could practice sketching lightly, as I mentioned, not pressing hard on the paper or the pencil itself, not giving it the death grip, So all these little rules, all these habits that you want to teach yourself from the beginning are a great opportunity to do in these small books, even in your sketchbook, and just practicing it while keeping them in mind. So here we got the highlights, midtones, and shadows. You can see that present over here. Those are pretty much the foundation for shading. So the more you practice it, the better you get at all these other techniques as well. As I mentioned, keeping light, not pressing hard, keeping a distance. And one of the things that I mentioned about keeping a distance and why that's important is because, again, it obstructs your vision. When you're holding your pencil like all the way to the bottom, you can't really see everything else. Your hand is blocking it because you're holding the tip. And it's very tempting when you are a beginner to do that because you feel like you have more control over the lines, right? The further you are away, it feels kind of wobbly. You feel uncertain with your lines. And especially if you're also trying to keep it loose, your line variation can seem kind of sorry, I'm just trying to open up chat right now. Yeah, your line variation can seem a little bit uncertain, or you might feel uncertain while you're creating these lines, holding the pencil at a distance. But just like anything else, at the beginning it's awkward. As you keep practicing it, it becomes easier. So yeah, these exercises are excellent for it. You could practice you could practice your basic shapes, the circle being like the most important starting point for your drawing, because again, your head is going to be the unit of measurement. So you want to make sure that you draw the head right. You draw out the circle, you draw the cup shape underneath for the chin. And yeah, from there, the body builds out right. You draw the line down the middle and you could see how both sides are equal. They're the same. The same width, same height, etc. So that's really important. You don't want to make it look distorted, because then everything else becomes distorted. Everything else becomes kind of odd shaped. And this is an example of that. You see, this is when somebody drew the head. They didn't care for trying to get the circle as perfect as possible. They just kind of gave it this like oblong shape, gave it the chin shape, and then from there they used it as a unit of measurement, and you could see how that distorts the entire body. If you were to measure it, you would see like, okay, knowing the rule is 3 heads across for the chest. Yeah, that seems right, but then everything else is distorted because of this distorted head. Same thing here. The person didn't care to draw it as a circle. It's kind of oblong. They didn't take much time. And then they used it as a unit of measurement for the rest of the body, and it turned out to be this really narrow, elongated body. This right here is an example of done correctly. The head is proportionate, and therefore it rippled through the rest of the body. Everything else is proportionate, following the head as a unit of measurement. So yeah, you want to make sure that you practice these basic shapes. They're simple. They allow you to focus on all the other good habits I mentioned earlier, as opposed to being bombarded with so much different stuff. Let me see now, just making a tracking time. I'm trying to get as much as is said quickly so that it's not the entire stream. Basic shapes help you improve your drawing. and excellent form of stretching. It's like going to the gym. You're not going to start lifting the heaviest weights. You're going to cause injury. You're going to get disheartened. It's going to be an unpleasant experience. Whereas if you do stretches, you warm up, you feel good, and then you could jump into a little bit more of a difficult exercise. So the same idea here. You start out with stretches, you do some simple shapes, you start practicing your hand, you get it warmed up, you get it flexible, and then you jump into something more difficult, more challenging. So yeah, it's the same idea here. You can, if you get bored of, let's say, drawing a circle, shading the circle, using that highlights, midtones, and shadows on the circle, you do it on a cylinder shape. The next most crucial basic shape for learning to draw, drawing the human figure. As you guys can see in this example, pretty much most of the body is comprised of the cylinder shape. You got the wrist, which is pretty much that. You got the upper part of the arm, even the neck, the torso, the legs as well. You notice that it's basically a cylinder shape. That's the point of drawing them out this way, is to just demonstrate. You could tackle all these body parts or the entire body using this simple shape. So the more you draw it, the more it becomes a reference to you when you sit down and you sketch things. Like, as I mentioned before, drawing lightly, trying to draw the entire figure prior to jumping into detail. It's an excellent way to do that. You see that a lot and a lot of artists mention, or a lot of teachers who teach art mention, that it's important to sketch out everything. And it becomes intimidating when you do that, because you're like, what am I sketching? And practicing these shapes are an excellent go-to. You are not drawing just random squiggles hoping it's going to shape the body. You're actually jumping to something that really does help you build out the figure. So the more you practice it, the more it becomes your reference. You start right away. The body is basically a big cylinder shape. The torso rather, and then the arms are also. So by doing that, by simplifying it, it's less intimidating. You're less flustered. You're like, oh no, what if it's all wrong? So that frustration, that anxiety is kind of subsided, because you're using these simple methods to make it less intimidating. So that's pretty much it. There's, as I mentioned, you got the unit of measurements page. You guys can find that on the Patreon page. You could download it and just review all this stuff. It's pretty self-explanatory. If you take some time to look at it, you could see two heads across, two heads vertically to show the measurement of the body. And, once you draw your own head shape in your own sketchbook, it doesn't have to be exactly like this, the size, the height, length, whatever. It could just be on your page, as long as it's a perfect circle for the head. From there on, you could just build it up yourself. You include the line down the middle to make it easier for you to compare and make sure that everything is equal to each other. Both halves are equal to each other. They're proportionate to each other. And basically just redraw this as often as possible. As I like to mention, it's like the alphabet. When you were learning it, you didn't draw it. You didn't recite it once. You didn't write the alphabet once and then from there pick up like the most difficult book ever and then understand everything in it. All the letters, all the words, immediately from that one take. So the same idea is here. If you draw it once, you're not going to just immediately remember. And if you do, great. That's the point. You just want to be able to understand all this stuff. But just a note, it's not a competition. You're not supposed to be incredibly fast. It's not important that you're faster than. The important thing is you end up remembering this stuff. So take your time with it. Study it, redraw it multiple times. Have it be your exercise when you sit down to draw. Which is why I mention it's important to at least spend 2 hours. Even 1 hour. Hell, even 30 minutes is better than nothing. But 2 hours, you can get a really good workout from it, in a sense. You could start out by drawing all this out every day. You know, you do this exercise. It's going to take you about like an hour or so. Or it might take you the entire time, but eventually you will get faster and better at it because you just keep doing it. Same way you did with the alphabet, right? You eventually learned all of it. You were able to recite it with ease, and now when you read, you don't need to do that. It just happens. So the same thing happens with this. You know, you draw it enough, and it just becomes ingrained, and it's really easy. It becomes easier and easier to do it. Your eye just is able to structure it so well because it's gotten used to it. Yeah, so check this page out. It's available on Patreon. It starts with tier 2. You can have access to it. You can print it out, review it. I will do a more extensive one in the middle of the week. So today's Monday. On Wednesday, I will be doing a review. And then Friday as well. So you guys can be reminded. You can keep it fresh in your memory each time to get those things. All right, y'all. Let's jump into the next lesson. So we did the legs. And just a brief overview. We did all the legs. I will be uploading this as well for you guys to check out. It's important to draw all this stuff out because, again, you're practicing anatomy. You might not be drawing the bones this way, but at some point you might want to. You might want to draw a skeleton or something like it, and it's a great opportunity to practice that. But foremost, number one thing, regardless of what the topic is, whether it's this, you're practicing to draw. And you're having some new material each time to draw. You're not drawing the same thing over and over again. You're drawing the back of it, you're drawing the front, the side, with muscles, without muscles, profile, you're mixing it up. So you might not understand all the muscles immediately. You might not be able to recite them the next day. Whoops. But you are practicing to draw, and you are slowly building up your understanding through it. So just more content, more things to draw, more things to practice, and it's just better, So some of you might argue and be like, I'm never going to draw these muscles in reality, but you are practicing hand-eye coordination. You're practicing precision. You're practicing your ability to recognize all these details, which pour into everything, whether you're working from imagination, whether you're trying to copy from reference, whether you're drawing from real life. By drawing all this out, you learn skills, you learn techniques, and you learn methods in your own way, in your own mind, of how to achieve all these precisions and how to draw out all this stuff. And as I mentioned, the more you draw, the better. So I will be uploading all this stuff. I will be reviewing it as well. You guys can see there are some pages here where I give you guys examples of all the bones, which help you understand how the muscles kind of move, how they change. So when you're drawing something in this pose, okay, well, there's a muscle here, and that muscle can show more, it could protrude more, and you could draw these shadows. The same way over here, right? The point isn't to draw out all the muscles and every single ligament here, but by understanding where they are, as you see here, by understanding where these muscles are, practicing them, you're able to make the right shadows, create the right shadows to have realistic and accurate placement of the muscles. So not necessarily in crazy amount of detail, but this simple suggestion makes it look right, anatomically correct, proportionate, etc. So there's multiple benefits to it. It's not just being incredibly technical and studying all these terms that you're never going to use in drawing. The terms are there so that you understand which muscle changes as the arm makes movement. So from out to in, the muscles on a muscular arm start to like protrude out or start to show themselves more. And you want to know which muscle that is, so that when you're working from your imagination, you can play around with that muscle. You could be like, oh, I know it's over here, and because the arm is turning, I can give it a shadow here. And it'll be accurate, it'll be right, rather than I drew this arm this way, and that's the only way I know how to draw it, in this one angle. You know, that's pretty much it, because I don't understand the interior. I don't understand the muscles. You know, how do they look if the arm changes? You can't draw that same shadow for the muscle when the arm changes, because then it doesn't look right. Even people who are not artists, they can look at the image and say, something is off, you know, and that's something you want to avoid. You want to portray as much of a realistic look if you're going for that with the figure. So yeah, that will be available as well. We talked about the leg, and I was giving you guys some pointers on what the general shape of it is. This guideline right here is very helpful, and you could see it's present for the front of the leg, for the back of the leg, for the side view, the profile view. You could see that this waving guideline really does give you a better understanding of the shape of the leg. And then we went into just basically everything that we kind of went over, right? You're drawing basic shapes as the figure, and then from there you could build on top of it. You could connect all the limbs and all the body parts together. As you could see here, you know, there's still these basic shapes you could see in the background, sort of, but it just shows how you can connect everything once you do have all the basic shapes down. They're very prominent here. For example, when you are drawing this, when you are drawing these basic shapes, you keep it light, so that way they're not as prominent, and you could build on top of them. Here is an example of basically, well, why does the body look the way it does? You know, why does it curve inwards here? Well, that's because there isn't any bone there. You know, this is predominantly ligaments in between your hips and your chest. So it does dip in. So when you understand the interior structure, you know how to drape it. You know, you understand why it's shaped out to be this way. And you'll avoid making mistakes that make it look distorted. You know, some people draw out without understanding this, you know, without drawing and practicing and understanding the interior. They'll draw out like a tiny torso. So it'll be like chest, and then the chest is very close to like the hips, while everything else is kind of proportionate, like the arms are long enough, you know, and it just looks weird because they just don't understand the interior working of it. They're shrinking, elongating, and expanding things because they don't know how all that drapes around the interior of the body. So this kind of demonstrates that. It shows that, well, again, this is the chest and this is the rib cage right here, so it does expand out. You know, these are the interior parts that need the space. You need the space in between the hips and the chest, the ribs, in order to be able to bend side to side, to back, to the front. You know, you need that space to be there, so make sure you include it. Also with the hips, you know, there are these bones, these pelvic bones that jut out, so that's going to be visible as well on the exterior of the body. So by drawing this out, you just get a better understanding of it. You know, all this combined together, all these basic shapes, the interior design, if you want to talk about buildings again, right? They're basically put all together to create a solid, well-rounded drawing that's proportionate, that makes sense, and that basically tricks the viewer's eyes to believe that this is actually a person, you know, but it's not. It's just a drawing. There are a bunch of lines put on paper, and people connect with it, or they feel something from it, you know, whether it's an attractive female or male, or a face that connects some sort of emotion through it, but they're all lines. So that's what you're basically doing. You're trying to convey to the viewer that this is real. You know, you want to engage with them. So when you create a drawing with all these foundations coming together, it creates that illusion, creates this experience for the viewer. So this is what all this is about. This is the point of all these details and all these different things to practice. Now you got people who I'm going to continue on with this. I'm going to build it out fully, and then I'm going to move on to a more fleshed out version, literally. So yeah, you have people who draw all this stuff out, or they draw the figure, but as I mentioned before, they only just know how to draw it from one angle because they drew from, let's say, another artist, right? They copied the figure over and over and over again, and when they sit down to draw from their own imagination, they're still drawing that same exact figure, slightly altered. And that's because they're limiting themselves of the understanding of the human body. Hey Marco, welcome to Art Lounge. I'm glad you're in the stream. Are you also learning to draw? Yeah, it's as I was mentioning, it is important to just understand all that stuff to just improve your work from imagination as well. You know, you're able to draw all the figures in all the different angles, all the different shapes that you want it to be in, and it makes sense. And that doesn't come from just, you know, copying one figure or one drawing over and over and over again. That comes from practicing all of these things. As I mentioned before, you're getting a three-dimensional understanding of the figure in your mind, in your imagination, so that you can construct it better from your imagination. Pretty good, Marco. I'm here showing you guys all these different tips and tricks, drawing as well, so I'm enjoying myself. Can't complain. And the interior also shows you the limit to the different muscle groups. So you're not drawing them too wide as well. Like you could see how, as I was mentioning before, how it's draped on the bones. And I'm trying to convince you guys to take time to draw this, because I personally, was in that position as well. Like when I was learning to draw, I would always question, like, well, what's the importance of all this? Like, why am I going to draw out all these bones and all these details? Like, I just want to be able to draw the figure. I want to be able to draw the pose the way I want it to be and have it look correct. But when it came down to it, as I was mentioning, like when it came down to wanting to draw something different, something different, let's say from this, like I'll draw out all this, but if I was to sit down and want to change the pose, for example, have both arms resting on the hip, or changing the leg position, it became incredibly difficult because I still didn't grasp the figure itself, all the different elements and how they play on each other in a sense. And all the muscles basically, and how those muscles work with each other. I was completely clueless with it. But then once I started practicing all this, like when I was practicing from this book, and I started to grasp all this stuff, it became a little bit easier. It didn't completely resolve every issue that I had, but it got me a lot closer to understanding things than before. Whereas before I was just stuck in these like very rigid drawings. Same poses, same look in a sense, but just like slightly altered face expression or outfit or whatever else. I was trying to cover up the fact that I just didn't quite grasp all these different parts. And something else that I've mentioned before, which is you don't want to fake it. Well, like there's some drawings that I've seen, especially from students who are just starting out, where if they didn't know how to draw something, they would just hide it. So they would hide it behind the back, for example. The arm would be behind the back, or the feet wouldn't be in the image. Like they would draw it all the way up to, like, let's say the calves, and then just never wanting to practice. It's like you're sweeping under the rug the problem that you'll eventually have to address. You can't keep drawing drawings and avoiding the arms and the feet because they're too challenging. It's gonna reveal itself. You're gonna come across that problem, and the more and more you sweep it under the rug, the bigger that pile is gonna get. And eventually you're gonna have to confront it and you try to practice and draw. So everything else is gonna improve. Your face is gonna improve. The body is gonna improve because you keep drawing them over and over, avoiding the arms, avoiding the feet. And then when you sit down and you draw the feet, you'll have like a really nice image with all these nice features, and then awful looking feet and awful looking hands. That'll completely ruin the drawing. So you want to avoid doing that. If you can't draw those things, it's best to take time and understand them, and that's the best way to do it, is to copy from these pages that give you a better understanding. And just like the alphabet, you'll eventually just pick it up, from drawing over and over again. You won't have to, it won't be as laborious. You don't recite it every time you sit down to read. The same thing will happen here. You just have to keep practicing it until you get a pretty good understanding, until you feel confident enough to draw it and you get some good results. And sometimes it's not even as technical. I talk about all this stuff and I give you guys details about all this information. But the best thing and the best way you could learn is by just practicing them, by drawing them over and over. Next time you sit down to draw the feet, you'll just remember, all right, there's this shape right here. There's the heel part, there's the arch. That's important. That really makes it look good. Like I saw recently somebody draw a really good image of Spider-Man. Great pose, but the feet look like mittens. You could tell this person hardly ever draws the feet. So the image itself is so good, but then it's just something like that just kind of ruins it. And you could tell, okay, they're really trying to run away from an insecurity in a sense, and this kind of plays into like real life as well. When you sweep things under the rug too much, it becomes very apparent, and kind of blatantly obvious to others as well when they're looking at it. So you're not really fooling anybody. You're kind of fooling yourself by not addressing them, and not trying to find a better understanding or way to deal with it. So the same thing here. It's like you're really not going to fool anybody when you're trying to hide the hands. You're just making your drawing look less less skilled, I guess, less determined to grasp all these things, to get better at them. And part of the fun and the excitement of drawing is to overcome these hurdles. You first started out and you weren't able to even draw the figure. Now you're at a point where you're grasping it even better. And then the next thing is tackling parts of it that you're not really, or you weren't really good at prior, and overcoming that. And then once you get there, you're just like, nice, that's not something I'm struggling with anymore. I'm actually past that point. So I'm going to start on this. I can't promise you guys that it's all going to be finished because we do have a limited time left for drawing basics. But I will be back at 9 p.m. for drawing comics, where I'm going to be drawing from this amazing artist named John Buscema. If you guys haven't heard of him, I highly encourage you to check out the first stream of drawing comics, where I show you guys a 5-minute reel that I created talking about his life, basically his journey to becoming an illustrator at Marvel, and showing you guys some drawings that he did that aren't really mainstreamed and common. There's some sketches that I'm pretty sure are published in a book full of his sketches, but yeah, they're not as common on the internet. So you get a peek of that, you get insight into his life. It's a fun 5-minute video. I highly encourage you guys to get more familiar with who John Buscema was. And yeah, I'll be drawing comics, his comics specifically, Conan the Barbarian. Learning from that as well, and just really admiring his work and how amazing his work is in general. So make sure you check that out. It's going to start at 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, right here on Art Lounge. As you guys can see, I'm trying to give myself boundaries to work with. By using these lines, it's kind of like a stick figure. It's at the most simple form prior to jumping into like more basic shapes or anything. Just something to shape it on, in a sense. The wire work, let's just say it's the wire work prior to building the figure. And I think it really helps making sure that everything is proportionate. So just like all the other page parts of the page, like we started out with basic shapes, right? Very simple form, then connected the body to it, connected the limbs to each other rather, to the same exact figure, the same exact shapes, trying to understand the skeletal structure that fits within all this, and then to finally more of a defined image. You guys can also tune in tomorrow, same time and place, 8 p.m. Eastern Standard, for more drawing basics, where I will be getting into a new page, finishing up probably this one, and starting a new page for you guys to check out. So make sure you tune in tomorrow, same time, 8 p.m. Eastern Standard. And for those of you just tuning in, check out the Patreon page. It's in the Twitch channel with all the other links to social media platforms that I have on there. Check out the Patreon page to see which tier interests you. There's some interesting options there, and you guys will get access to these pages where you could print them and work from them and build your skill from there. So just an important note, it's not necessary to follow that exact wire work, as I was talking about earlier, the sketch that I made earlier. It's not important to draw exactly over it. You could shift things around. The purpose of it is to give yourself some parameters to work within, to limit how far you're going to draw things out, like to make sure that the limbs are close to each other. One isn't all the way over here, the other one over there. That's really the point of it. It's to limit the extent of your drawing, in a sense. Confine it more into specific space that's proportionate to each other. Alright, y'all. I'm gonna have to cut the stream for drawing basics here. Right after I finish this foot. And stick around for drawing comics. Starting at... Let's make sure I get this. Well, starting in 5 minutes, actually. So thanks for tuning in, y'all. If you enjoy the content, hit the subscribe button, hit the like button. Both help the stream expand to reach out to more viewers. And yeah, stick around. I'll be back in 5 minutes.